Good evening. Today is Friday, August 1st, 2025. Update for Monday 4th. All right, let's go. Well, obviously, not a fantastic day in the portfolio. We got a little help from the gold, so that's helped to mitigate the damages a little. As far as official setups, let's stick with SLDP. I took the oust out. It pulled back into its prior pullback. In fact, let's take a look at that right now. You can see it's pulled back kind of deeply into this prior pullback. I'm going to go ahead and pass for now. It doesn't mean that it can't resume its uptrend, obviously. I just don't like the way it looks based on adding in today's action. I still do like SLDP, even though the pullback's fairly deep here. In fact, I like the fact that it's deep after such an incredible run higher. Of course, make sure you wait for entry and then check the spreadsheet. I did lower the entry a little bit on that one. So let's just stick with those two for now. There is one short in here. I don't see any reason to go after these shorts at this juncture. I just like to show you what I'm seeing as I'm seeing it. Let's take a look at the portfolio real quick, and then we'll pop out to the marketed sectors. I have a lot to say about that. Bitcoin got whacked today, as did BT, and we'll take a look at Bitcoin in just 1 second. Out of your stop, just in case on that one. KGC actually ended a little higher today, much better than a poke in the eye, not too far from all-time highs, so far so good there. KTOS off its worst levels, but pull it back a little bit. But so far, it looks like just that, a pullback from these high levels. TFPM ending higher, as did the other golds, or most other golds, I should say. Just consolidating by trading mostly sideways to lower into here. Still looks okay longer term, though. TGen off its worst levels, still down on the day. Not too far away from those all-time highs, though. And finally, VG selling off fairly hard, recovering to close off its worst levels, but down a little on the day nonetheless. Let's take a look at the overall market and drill down a bit. First of all, S&P 500. P's got whacked fairly hard, and then they kept on going. I was sort of anticipating an opening gap reversal, which didn't happen. They closed off their worst levels, but obviously still whacked down over 1.5% nonetheless. So far, they still look pretty good, though. So far, this just looks like corrective action. I sure like to see this gap be closed. It did come down to touch the 30 EMA, so that gets rid of the Landry line, I should say, resets to zero. Doesn't reset. NASDAQ Composite selling off fairly hard. Also down 2.25% round numbers. It has a big fat gap to fill. So far, though, still looks pretty good. So far, just pulling back. But obviously, these pullbacks can be painful when the market is coming off all-time highs fairly hard like this. Rusty 2000, what an ugly day there. Down 2%. Now a short-term overhead supply and then longer-term overhead supply to deal with. So it's got its work cut out for it for now. Some of these areas like cybersecurity, which have been trading a little sideways in here, came back below their prior breakout. So that is of some concern. EFA shares continue to slide, although off their worst level, still sliding nonetheless. So far, that looks like a top is in place. As I said a second ago, Bitcoin got whacked fairly hard today. Not the end of the world. So far, just kind of a pullback / consolidation. But obviously, out of your stops on anything Bitcoin related. Gold, the commodity, decent day, pushing toward the middle of its range. So that's a good thing. Gold miners, or gold stocks, I should say, up a little on the day too. Not too far away from those all-time highs. I sure like to see it get there, though. The NASDAQ Biotech Index, the IBB, actually did okay today, believe it or not. Still has a lot of overhead supply. But as I've been saying, there is some momentum within the sector. Some areas like software, a bit of a bummer, coming back in their prior breakout levels. Other areas that have been weak continue to be weak, such as IHF, that's healthcare. Defense coming down a little bit today, but then coming back by the end of the day to almost close, well, not quite in the plus column, down a little bit less than 0.5%. But anyway, so far it's just pulling back. So far it's just kind of TKO-ish in nature. Lithium so far looks constructive. So far just a deep pullback there. The mags got hit fairly hard, and this is a little bit of concern because now we're back below that prior peak. So that's something that we definitely want to pay attention to. Uranium, you can see, got whacked fairly hard in here, so now it has a big fat gap. I like to see that gap filled before getting too excited about going after those stocks at this juncture. Financial, selling off fairly hard back below the prior breakouts. And finally, well, let's take a look at a couple other areas. Semiconductors selling off fairly hard, off their worst level, still down nonetheless, right below this prior peak. So again, there's some, or there's some generally, let me just rewind that. So obviously with today's action, things are a little ugly out there. Overall, things are constructive, but we need to pay attention to see if some of these areas that recently came back in after breaking out continue to slide. So as usual, it's a one day at a time type of environment. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, daviddavelandry.com, or hit me up on Facebook. I'll be checking in throughout the weekend. If not, again, have a great weekend, and we'll talk again on Monday.